A season with many questions, and those questions are about to get answered here in the next few weeks. All right, how's it going, guys? We're here talking some Penn State football. Um, let's start with the unfortunate news about Journey Brown and his medical condition and him potentially missing the 2020 season. Potentially is a very weird word in this situation because we don't know if potentially means probably. Yeah, probably. Yeah, there we go. Probably. And whether like potentially could mean, oh, well, there's a 10% chance he can miss the whole season, or it can mean there's a 90% chance, or it could mean 50-50. It could be a ton of things. It could be like, oh, well, he'll be back maybe week 4, or if he does come back, maybe he'll only come back week 7, week 8, or we have no idea really what's going on with Journey Brown. We just know he has a medical condition, and there's a possibility he'll miss the entire season, and that's it. And for a guy like him, that a lot of people were excited to see this season because the second half of last year he played very well. He just seemed to be scratching the surface of what he could be as a player, and we thought that this season would be a breakout year for him, not just um, at Penn State, but in all college football. And yeah, I mean, I thought he broke out last year, but I feel like he's still not considered like a nationwide household name. I feel like he could have been that this year. Um, I think that you can make an argument that the two best players on our team, Micah Parsons and Journey Brown, were um, coming into the season, and it's just unfortunate that we lost both of those guys. Um, yeah, there's a ton of questions for this team this season. You got new offense coordinator, new D line coach, new receivers coach, new O line coach, um, and now that we got two of our biggest contributors um, looking like they're not going to be playing this season, it's very unfortunate. I still feel like this team is the second best in the Big Ten. Um, with Micah Parsons and Journey Brown, I thought we were better than Ohio State. Losing one of those guys, though, I think puts us behind Ohio State. Um, and now we lost both, which is going to be really even make it a lot harder to beat them now. I'm not saying that we couldn't beat them. Not saying we couldn't beat them, but it's going to be a tough task. It would have been really nice to have both of those guys. And look at the running back depth chart. Noah Kane, very capable running back. A lot of people love Noah Kane. I like Noah Kane, maybe not as much as what a lot of other people do, but I think he's a very capable back. And then you look at the three backs behind him, Devin Ford, highly ranked recruit. Um, I'm looking forward to seeing if he could maybe break out and be a guy that be a really good running back option for us. Keziah Holmes, Kevon Lee, two true freshmen coming in. We'll see how much time they'll get. I think Keziah Holmes, based off what I've seen and heard, he's a guy that has done a lot of good things in practice. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a lot of time. And this is a season with a lot of questions, and obviously with COVID and everything, and it's just it's a pretty big season. We knew coming in even before COVID, it's a long time ago back in January. This season was going to be a very big season because we thought this could be the year to break through and make the playoff, beat Ohio State. We had them at home, white out. We had a great linebacker, Micah Parsons, great running back in Journey Brown. A ton of talent all over the field. Even though there were a couple question marks, maybe like receiver, the secondary didn't play well last year. We knew we can get those fixed, possibly, anyways. And it's just it's very very unfortunate what's happening with this team. It's been mainly bad news on from the roster standpoint. It's been a bad year in recruiting. It's but you got to stay positive because this team is still very good. Like I said, I still think it's the second best team in the Big Ten, and I think we're still capable of beating Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State is as good as maybe what some people think. They got Justin Fields back. They have, some couple good running backs. They always got a solid O line. They have always got good receivers, and their defense, I think, will be a lot less worse than last year. I mean, think about it this way: they lost four of the top 10 players, or three of the top 10 players in college football last year. Chase Young, Jeffrey Okuda, and J.K. Dobbins, I think, were four of the top 10 players in the nation last year, and they lost all three of them. Now they got Justin Fields back. This is obviously a big deal, but I don't think that uh, him alone is gonna make up for the other three lost. They got Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, two really good receivers back, but they lose a couple good ones as well. They got some unproven freshmen coming in that we don't know exactly. Obviously, Julian Fleming's very talented. We know what he can do, but with freshmen, you don't know what you're going to get always, right away. We don't know if it's going to take a couple years to develop or whether it's just going to be like a right away thing. Um, and then, I just think this team matches up against Ohio State pretty well. I think we have good speed and everything. And, here I am talking about Ohio State when I'm advocating against looking too far ahead against them. But, as a fan, I feel like I can do it. But team better make sure they beat Indiana because Indiana is going to be ready. They're going to make sure that they come out against Penn State well prepared because they feel like that they are good enough to be along the lines of say a Penn State or a Michigan, and which is true. I mean they've played us in Michigan very close, and I can understand if you were an Indiana fan or play for Indiana or coach for Indiana why you would think that you kind of deserve to be along those same lines because you've kind of shown that throughout the games that you've played against them. And you had a solid season last year, 8-5. That why you think you can beat Penn State, and we got to make sure we're ready coming into that game. I think that we're gonna win. I don't know how it's gonna look though. I think what my prediction is that Indiana will be winning at halftime. I think the team's gonna look bad the first half. You have a lot of people complaining, saying about how bad of a season this is gonna be, and then the second half, Penn State will make sure and do enough to win. I think it's going to be a good, close game. Um, and I think that a lot of people are going to be frustrated early on. The offense hasn't gotten any game time, and when you start a season with a new offense coordinator, you know, it obviously is great to start against like Idaho or somebody that like we would have played Kent State in a normal season the first game of the season, and you don't want to play a team right away that when you have new staff or new quarterback, which we don't have this year. We have returning quarterback. Like when you have something that you have to replace a lot of starters, you always want to start against bad teams. And Indiana is a solid team. They got votes in the AP poll. They're they're decent, and we got to make sure we come out. They're not your father's Indiana team, and I wouldn't be surprised if we lost to them. To be honest with you, I mean I think that they're very capable. All right, and just the rest of the season, I think after Indiana and Ohio State, you got mostly wins. I think Michigan will be a very tough opponent. I think that'll be a close game in the Big House. Um, then you look at everywhere else in the schedule. I'm not too worried about. I think we'll beat Maryland and Michigan State, and I think we'll beat Rutgers and Nebraska and Iowa. You know, teams that maybe can make some noise this year. But Nebraska obviously has a tough schedule. But maybe they'll be battle hardened by the time they play Penn State. I don't know, but it just those two teams are always, I think, good enough to cause you fits, but to give you fits. But I think that overall, we should be able to take care of business against everybody. I think the three biggest games of the season that are on the schedule right now: Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana. If we can get 2-1 out of those three games, I think that that's a success. Um, even if we go 8-1, let's say we lose to Ohio State, win every other game, and then say beat Minnesota in the championship week game. I think overall that's a good season, and that could put us into the playoff. Way the dynamics in college football are working this season, you look at, let's say Alabama goes undefeated, and Georgia wins the rest of their games except in the SEC championship against Alabama. Then you got a two-loss Georgia, and then you got an undefeated Alabama getting in. They're probably the only team in the SEC getting in, unless some one-loss team that doesn't win their division, like let's say Texas A&M, for example, only has one loss in the SEC West. I think maybe you can make an argument that they deserve to get in over, like, say, a one-loss Penn State, but or an undefeated Pac-12 champion, like say Oregon goes undefeated. I could very well see them get in, but let's say somebody in the Pac-12 slips up, they have one loss. I don't think the Pac-12 is getting in. If the Pac-12 champion is a one-loss team, I think the Pac-12 is out. And the Big 12, the only team I think that's still available to make the playoff at this point is Oklahoma State. Um, and I don't think that they'll be undefeated much longer once they start playing Oklahoma and Texas and some of the Big 12's tougher competition. I don't see them coming out of their schedule without at least one loss. And I don't think that a one-loss Big 12 champion this year will make the playoff. Who knows? Maybe they will, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. And um, I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma State loses two games the rest of the season. So and then I guess you can look at the American Conference. I think the American might even be tougher than the Pac-12. They got Cincinnati and Central Florida, and a few tough teams in that conference. I think that conference the last couple of years has been saying they should be part of the like a Power Six, or for example. But I think the American is actually tougher than the Pac-12. Obviously, it's not the official Power Five conference, but um, I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a very complicated playoff situation this year. It's always complicated, anyways. But there's not a precedent for teams. Normally you got non-conference games to judge teams by, and then you got you know a bunch of games to in their conference. Which this year it's only like the ACC is going to be playing 11 games, and then and obviously the champion, whoever wins the conference, will be playing 12 games. So let's say Clemson goes 12-0, which I think is going to happen. They're going to get in. Say, for example, you're probably going to see a 12-0 Clemson get in the playoff, and then let's say like a 11-0 Alabama get into the playoff, and then let's say Ohio State goes undefeated. That'd be a 9-0 Ohio State. And then what I think is going to happen is either you're going to see a one-loss Texas A&M if they're not if they don't lose another game, and then you got like a undefeated Oregon possibly, and then like a one-loss Penn State. I think that's the most likely scenario at the end of the season. Um, and the question is, would a one-loss Penn State get over a one-loss Texas A&M? When you look at it, you see SEC, Big Ten. Most people would pick the SEC in that situation. If they each have one loss and Texas A&M is 9-1 and Penn State's 8-1, I think they're going to put Texas A&M in. Um, or if you have an undefeated Oregon, I think the undefeated Oregon team might get over both Texas A&M and Penn State in that situation. But like I said, if the Pac-12 can't slip up at all, I think that once one of those teams get one loss, they're out. Or like the Pac-12 champion, if they get one loss, they're out. And in the American Conference, I think it's interesting too. I don't think they're getting enough respect. Um, who knows if somebody goes undefeated in that conference, and let's say like they won it like Oregon. Let's say they lose a game, but they win the Pac-12. Let's say Texas A&M loses another game in the SEC. Let's say Penn State and every other team in the Big Ten has at least two losses. I could very well see somebody in the American Conference getting into that fourth spot. Um, but we'll see how the dynamics shape out over these next few weeks and towards the end of the season. Obviously, beating Ohio State would be huge for Penn State. I think that would almost, I don't want to say a lock because you got a bunch of other games, but if you beat Ohio State, you could still lose one other game and you'll be in the playoff or in the Big Ten championship, and which would probably get you into the playoff as long as you win the Big Ten championship. Even if you get to the Big Ten championship and lose, and you beat Ohio State, and that's the Big Ten title is your only loss, that could get you in. But we'll see. That's a long way away. We'll talk about it a lot more as the season shapes up. All right, let's get into recruiting here at the end. Derek Davis is committing November 7th, and this could be a highlight towards the end of a very bad class. This is probably the worst class I've ever seen at Penn State. We kind of figured that it wasn't going to be a great class anyways, just because last year we took like what about like 27 guys. It was a lot of guys, and we needed to take a lot lesser this year, and we figured that hopefully it might be like the 2019 class that went, only about 19 guys signed, but the thing is that 2019 class had about 17 guys that were blue chip prospects. That was as far as like blue chip ratio goes, that was an elite class. Um, so like even though we finished about 12th, I think we we felt really good about that class, and we were hoping that might be the same kind of thing with this class. So we might not take as many guys, but we'll have a really good blue chip ratio and be able to take a lot of four stars and get Nolan Rucci. That'll be our 5 star, kind of like Brandon Smith was our 5 star in the 2019 class, and it just didn't happen. Every guy it seemed like, except like Landon Tengwall and a couple guys here and there, there was a ton of options in the top 300 um, that we could have had. But the thing is, we always finished either like second or third or barely missed out. There are always teams that finished ahead of us that ended up getting, and obviously you get no consolation points for second and third. You either get the guy or you don't, and you don't get close in recruiting. It's as simple as that. And we had a ton of options. We never really closed the deal on most of them, and now we're sitting here with uh, outside of the top 30 in the nation for recruiting. And that's what Franklin's known for. He's supposed to be a great recruiter. He's always recruited inside the top 20 at Penn State, and we were hoping that we knew this class wasn't going to be like a top 5, top 10 class because of the amount of kids we would have had to take. A lot less, but we were hoping that the guys we would take would be, really good quality over quantity, as opposed to the 2020 class. The 2020 class took 27 guys, but we had quite a few 3 stars in there. So, um, even though we were ranked, I think 14th as far as like blue chip ratio goes, we were less. So like, obviously as far as depth goes, that helps having a bunch of guys, but this recruiting class isn't the best. Franklin even admitted it, and hopefully the next recruiting class will be a lot better. It's already off to a great start. Um, we'll see if the guys that are committed will stay committed when people commit that early. It just gets a little interesting because I think once visits start up again, which obviously the NCAA is going to need to do that. I mean, this 2021 class, except like when they're underclass high school years, they haven't been able to visit colleges. Your your senior year, end of your junior year, that's when you start really ramping up the visits and decision making. and obviously that's when COVID hit. And so teams that would have loved to go, or players that would have loved to go and visit places around the country, weren't able to do that. So I think you had a lot of teams miss out on prospects. Like for Penn State, when prospects um, talk about Penn State after they visit, they always talk about how um, they loved it and they love the atmosphere, the family atmosphere, and everything. And you typically go from maybe being kind